Thanks so much for having me here today. I really appreciate it. As he mentioned, I'm the Chief Operating Officer of Jun Group, and what we do, for those of you who don't know, is we distribute video for Fortune 100 brands, mostly using incentivized video views on mobile devices and on social networks. As the title says, we're going to... This guy's dead. As the title would say, if it was up there, we have been distributing video for a very long time. And I've been personally in the online advertising industry for a number of years, and it's been very wonderful to watch it evolve. Social games in particular have given Madison Avenue a real shock to the system. During our time today, I'll explain how and why that's come about. We'll examine some live examples and best practices. And in the end, we'll talk about how you guys can benefit from the changes. We'll start with a quick look at the advertising industry because I think it'll help put things into context. Then we'll look at the rise of social media and how its new structures have changed things. And we'll take a deep dive into the ad model that's developed. And lastly, we'll talk about ad revenue maximization. And I'll pause for a second. All right. So let's start with the brief history of the ad business. I live it every day, so it'll be very interesting for you guys who don't. For generations, this maxim has been the modus operandi of the entire industry. John Wanamaker, who's really widely considered to be the father of advertising, said, "Half the money I spend in advertising is wasted. The trouble is I don't know which half." And it grew out of print, radio, and television. And to advertise in these media, you had to expose people to ads over and over and over again, because otherwise no one would remember your message at all. This became even more important as the ad industry matured and became more cluttered. So a singular method became the standard, and that standard was called reach and frequency. Reach refers to the number of people an advertiser can interrupt across a wide audience. And frequency is the number of times an advertiser can interrupt you. And notice, interrupt is the common theme. Then, as you tie those two together, ad exposures are sold on an impression basis, which is just how many times does an ad show up on the screen or on television, which are then sold as a bucket of 1,000 at a time, called a CPM. Many of you probably know this already. But in the old age, in print and television advertising, actually quantifying impressions became a problem. So how many impressions does a billboard like this in Times Square generate? Or how do you tell how many impressions a television show has? The answer is no one really knows for sure. So the industry, even today, relies on rough estimates and sample polls from companies like Nielsen. Tens of billions of dollars, even today, all over the world, are determined by these crude methods. We call them extrapolations, but that's generous. It's really just a guess. And in the early 1990s, now fast forwarding to the web, this really all should have changed overnight. Unfortunately, the vast majority of online advertising, even today, still relies on reach and frequency in order to generate the so-called impressions. In other words, a banner showing up on ESPN or a video appearing in front of a Hulu video you're trying to watch. In other words, Madison Avenue took the model that worked really well for them offline, applied it directly to the web, and really didn't change a thing. They simply brought the same old thinking, and it really doesn't work that well. And only in the past few years has this methodology been challenged at all, and as you could guess, based on the venue, the catalyst was social media. So the rise of social media. It's really difficult to overstate the importance and the scope of social media. It's probably the most important cultural phenomenon since the advent of the web. It's changed the way that families and friends communicate, Skype, iChat, Google Hangouts now. It's changed news and journalism, breaking news about Ichiro being traded to the Yankees, for example. It's changed sports and entertainment. The big athletes are actually talking two-way to their fans on Twitter and other social networks. And it's changed dating, too. It's even helped topple a few governments. It's no surprise to anyone, therefore, that social media is changing advertising too, but admittedly quite reluctantly in that regard. To most advertisers, this is what social media advertising is about. So when you try to get in their shoes, you have to think about it from that perspective. All they know about is chasing the like. And the overall strategy is really simple. It's the same one they've been doing for 20 years. You put up a Facebook page, now that's a new version of the website, and drive as much traffic to it as possible. And hopefully you'll get people who like your brand and therefore will follow it for forever. In fact, Buddy Media was purchased for $800 million, and their main business was adding these tabs to the Facebook pages that brands are putting so much emphasis on. So you know where the media dollars are going. Another place that media dollars are going in social media are the Facebook tile ads that you guys know all too well. But the real disruption is coming from social games, and that's why we're here today. And we're out again. So the new model. Social games are enormously popular, and since you can't see them, I'll just read a few of the stats for you. There will be 100 million social gamers in the US this year, according to eMarketer. Gamers will spend more than 25%. All right, there we go. 81 million people play a social game once a day, and the average time spent in social gaming is 24 minutes per day. But more importantly than perhaps the size and the scope of social games is the value that it delivers to advertisers. So social game developers intuitively understand something that Madison Avenue has yet to realize. The power has shifted, and now users are in control. So Hulu and ESPN, all of these places, they care about interrupting users as much as possible. And now that's changed. Users and advertisers have to realize that the power has shifted, and users are now in control of advertising. You can't interrupt users and expect them to follow you. The video that's going to be on the screen in a moment is a video from Cartown. What you'll notice in this video is that there's a little 50XP icon on the right side. And the way that works is a user will watch a video and actually opt in to watch that video, and then will get XP in reward. So the game developers, they don't want to interrupt users by having an ad banner or an interstitial or a pop-up. So they're finding a unique way, which is called incentivized video, to reach these users in an engaging way that advertisers will be happy about. So this structure is what we refer to as incentivized video. It may appear simple, but when you think about the mindset of advertisers, this is a dramatic disruptive change from the way that ads are normally bought and sold. Instead of reach and frequency, let's interrupt you as much as possible over and over and over again. Let's change that model. And you don't need to worry about having a user watch a video 8 or 9 times. All you have to worry about is whether or not they were engaging the very first time. So in this model, the CPM is gone, and it's been replaced by CPV for cost per view, or CPE, which is cost per engagement. And now everything that advertisers can buy can actually be on performance, and you actually will get what you pay for. So finally, Mr. Wanamaker and his 50% of inventory of advertising lost, and I don't know which half, can be put to bed, and the maxim no longer needs to apply. But this has not always been an easy course. Incentivized video is a great, great value, and you'll see a few stats, or you'll hear a few stats in a moment about how well they perform. But incentivized video has not always been greeted with open arms. One client of ours actually got angry when we delivered it to him and said that that's bribery. But the numbers themselves can be much more persuasive than the words, since incentivized, honestly, has a stigma attached to it. But when you look at the results of these units, they deliver the goods. So when you look at a 30-second video, which is probably a little less than average of the average video that runs in these channels, and you look at the performance, 95% of people who watch a 30-second spot in this incentivized view channel watches it all the way to the end. Compare this to pre-roll, Hulu, ESPN, where they're desperately trying to get people to watch it and forcing you to do so. They see 60 to 65% of people complete the video. That's an incredible difference. Then, when you look at what happens after the video, users are engaging with the brand, which doesn't happen in any other type of ad unit. In fact, 3 to 5% of people will interact with a brand by clicking to go to a store locator, or going to a recipe download, or becoming a fan of the brand after the video is done. We asked one of our clients where that stacked up against other brands and other advertisers that have run with them. They said that the average rate of post-video activity, which is what we call it, was less than 1%. So these units that you guys are able to add to your games are outperforming the industry by 3 to 5x. This means that advertisers are going to want this unit. There's another metric that brands love to use, which is about brand perception. Specifically, brand perception rose 38% when users watched a video on this channel. And 161%, can I just have that back? Just want that stat back. All right, consumers were 161% more likely to click to go to a website of a brand after watching a video in this unit. So these results are simply unprecedented today. It's all right, man. I can do this without the slides. So, and those stats really show only a partial story. When people opt in to see a video, you can identify them now using their social profile, or you can ask them their age or gender, and then your IP address will geolocate you to a longitude and latitude. Compare that to cookie-based advertising on the web today, where you're trying to match them based on their browser history, and if you're Google, you might be able to do it, but a lot of the other ad networks don't really know who you are. But in this channel, you actually can tell age, gender, and geography. So not only are advertisers connecting with real, engaged people, they're connecting with the right audience, and they're doing it consistently. And just as importantly, social game ad units connect advertisers to the consumers after the video completes. We conducted a study last year based on 7 million video views that we delivered for brands, and found that the view actions, the actions after the view, in social games, such as the recipe downloads and sharing and likes that we mentioned, generated 30% additional value to brands that they didn't have otherwise. That means the average $100K budget with us delivered $130,000 worth of value. Coming around full circle now to Mr. Wanamaker and the days of sample polls, ad programs on social games deliver real data. You could compare 2 different video assets. You can compare their view-through rates. You can compare the age and gender reaction. You can actually measure how often does an 18 to 34-year-old male click to go interact with the brand versus a 25 to 54-year-old female. This is serious data that helps brands understand their audience better and be able to make better decisions. So let's talk about how developers can benefit from the dramatic changes. The first rule of advertising is know thy audience. So I wanted to give you a sense of the way that brand advertisers think, and this goes actually very, very similarly to what Wild Tangent was saying just an hour ago, for those of you who were here. There's a very big difference between brand advertising and direct marketing. And brand advertisers, they're going to go where the audience is. So you guys have a great advantage there. Social games are gigantic. But there are other important facets to the decision-making process that you should be aware of. There's a famous saying at Coca-Cola: if all of our factories were delivered overnight, we could survive it. But if people suddenly didn't know about our brand, we'd go out of business overnight. So when you think about that, the brand advertisers are going to make certain decisions about where they run based on how safe they feel, for example. So if you have a lot of racy and violent content in your games, the truth is you're going to be limiting the amount of advertisers who are going to be willing to advertise with you, and that may be fine. In fact, my favorite games are the violent ones. But when you're making the decisions about what type of content to put in your games, you have to think about what type of advertisers are going to want to speak to me and talk to me. The other thing that brand advertisers are really interested in is contextual relevance. And what contextual relevance means is that you want to be next to relevant content. So for example, the Cartown example that you guys saw briefly, a car company like a Chevy or a Fiat would love to be running in Cartown. And a food company would love to be in a cooking app, and a fashion company would love to be running in Mall World or It Girl. So contextual relevance is important too. But the number one indicator for brand advertisers is performance. So in the long run, that'll work, but you have to realize that the brand advertisers do care about those other facets of the decision-making process. We sell a lot of advertising in social games. We sell tens of millions of video views per month for Fortune 100 brands. And the number one impediment, and I'm just being 100% honest here, is the way the games look. And when you compare a Forbes to a Car Town, they don't stack up, which means you need to be showing the numbers of how often these people interact and how long they watch the videos in order to capture the dollars. So when these games get more complex, both visually and conceptually, they're going to attract more dollars as well. Custom integrations are also very popular with advertisers. If McDonald's or Bing could be part of a Zanga property, and you could plant potatoes and turn them into French fries or something like that, McDonald's would be really interested in giving you hundreds of thousands of dollars to do it. The problem with these integrations is that they're really they really take up a lot of time to build, and most people don't have the ability to do it under the time frames that brand advertisers expect. So the games that think of a way to do custom integrations like this in a templatized fashion, in an automated fashion, and can deliver those goods to brand advertisers will make a lot of money and a big windfall for it. I haven't spoken about offer walls, but I want to mention them. Because I know they're important sources of inventory for what you guys do every day. And offer walls deliver outstanding value. What is this? Okay, whatever. So I haven't spoken about those offer walls. And what I want to mention about them is that they're connecting back to the difference between brand advertisers and direct marketers. Brand advertisers have a certain expectation about the way that their videos are going to be presented. So offer walls are not a good place for brand advertisers. So sticking a video ad in your offer wall is not going to work for brand advertisers. You might get some budget, but what you'll be doing is limiting your exposure to brand advertisers because they want to know exactly what they're running next to. They want something called 100% share of voice, which means that they want to be the only thing on the screen. And sometimes that's unreasonable, but that's what you're going to need to do in order to get brand advertiser dollars. So let's talk a little bit about the best case integration. The best integration that we've seen is when an integration goes directly into the game mechanics of the game. So let's talk about Tetris Battle, because they're one of my favorite games and actually one of our favorite partners. The integrations that have game mechanics built in take a little bit longer to integrate, but the truth is they drive a lot of volume and they drive a lot of user engagement. So in the Tetris Battle, for those of you who haven't played it, you have an energy meter that's a certain size based on what level you are. And every time you play a game, that energy meter goes down a little bit. And when you run out of energy, you either have to wait to play more, or thanks to video advertising, when you run out of energy now, you're shown a dialog box that allows you to click, watch a video, and refill part of your energy meter. This ad unit drives big dollars, but that's one thing. What you guys really need to care about is that it drives longer, more pleasurable engagements with your games and makes people play for longer, which is perhaps the most important metric of all. So by adding video ads into your game using these mechanics, you can make sure that users actually enjoy your game longer while still monetizing the users who wouldn't pay. One final thought for you. As I mentioned earlier, this ad industry is huge, and most of the inventory that's spent today is spent off of that polling data. And the big thing that you guys need to be focused on is the TV bucket. And as the Wild Tangent CEO said, there's a $70 billion industry of television ads that's just begging to move from the I can't measure anything, no quantitative metrics at all, to the web, where I can tell exactly how old you are and where you are in the world and whether or not you were actually paying attention. The problem is inventory. Adding up and accumulating all of the pre-roll inventory across the entire web is not enough to drive even a small pimple on that $70 billion figure. So the social games have a tremendous opportunity that they can suck up a lot of these dollars that wouldn't otherwise, because you guys can create ad units that drive lots and lots of volume and help bring those dollars over to the web. So the opportunity is huge. It's a $70 billion opportunity because brands would love to move their inventory over. And that's it. Thanks so much for the time, everyone. I'll be around to catch up, and if anyone has questions, feel free.